I think India has always had that advantage, and I think as trade becomes a much larger part of India, I mean, that advantage would reduce. But for now, I think India is relatively less impacted by global developments. We have good geopolitical relations with most countries, and the dependence of India on foreign capital flows has also moderated. And that's because India's current account deficit has seen a moderation and primarily driven by an acceleration in service exports. And the flow of local capital towards equities has also made Indian markets less susceptible to outflows on that account. So I would say net India's outlook is quite uh, de-risked in a way. And see, one good illustration of that is even in the Lehman year, India grew 5.5%. And that tells you a lot about the resilience of India's economy.
Right. I also want to get your thoughts in on where you see value in the market right now.
Tanvir, in this market, I mean, classic value is not available, to be honest. But in a relative sense, I think the banks, the power utilities, these are offering better value to my mind. What I find very expensive are the consumer staple companies. I but I think there is limited scope for multiples to move up.
What about PSU banks? Do you think they've turned the page when it comes to funding these big infrastructure projects, corporate lending, cleaning up their books, and how the IBC code, the bankruptcy code, has really helped in cleaning up their balance sheet? So do you think that relative to private banks, investors can also look at state-run banks in India because they traditionally trade at a discount?
Samir, I think this issue has not been, I mean, I would say not been properly understood by the market. So let me take a minute. I think the issue was not of public versus private banks as much as it was an issue of deep NPA cycle in corporate loans. And some private banks and most public banks had large corporate lending books, and therefore all these banks suffered. Now, coming to where we are today, I think, as you rightly said, the IBC and a lot of steps over last 5, 7 years, the NPAs have been cleaned up. The bank balance sheets are extremely clean. So I would say, I mean, my preference in banks is for the good public and the good private banks. I look for banks that have a deep liability franchise and whose technology platform is contemporary and is future fit. So I would say 4 or 5 banks would make that cut and between public and private.